two people who will get to come in and do introductions to tell us who you've invited here, Royce and Mark.
Yes, I've and there might be some more friends that are coming to experience the power of this collective. But no, I'd like to introduce Royce. Royce I met through a Rotary Club. She is not in this specific Rotary Club, but I go to a weekly meeting with a Rotary Club in Yumbe, Uganda, and Royce attends and supports that group, and so I would like to introduce her. And then next is Mark Sinovic, and he's from 1 Million Peacemakers, and really incredible organization that is their non-flict workshop that I just attended last week. Not only the content was transformational, but just the workshop itself was one of the best workshops I've ever attended, and virtually. So that says something. So I'd love to introduce them and for them to also introduce themselves.
Thanks, Jacob. Welcome, Royce and Mark.
Royce, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so a little more about myself. My background is agriculture, food, and nutrition. And I work with the community. I've retired from active service, but in Rotary, I'm doing a lot of community service in the areas of water, sanitation, hygiene. And I do private consultancies in food and nutrition, evaluation of projects that are implemented in Uganda. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Royce. So Mark Sadovnik, I'm originally from Montreal, and I think I'm going to start wearing a toque. We call it a toque in Montreal, to follow along Jacob's lead, right up there, type of thing. But I live in Hermosa Beach now, Los Angeles. I like to visit winter now versus live in it. And I'm actually the managing partner of Fifth Element Group, which is an impact advisory. We help companies and organizations all over the world amplify their impact, and we trademark the term leaders who care, because those are the leaders that we work with, and those are the leaders that we also are able to represent as leaders who care when we help them attract the best talent who wants to go where leaders really do care about making money and making economic profit and social profit at the same time. And the organization that Jacob's talking about is called Million Peacemakers. I'm on the board, and it's something that is really important to us right now, because Non-Flict is an amazing workshop, which you can all be invited to and check it out, that looks at conflict differently than something you have to hate somebody over. It just means different ideas, and it takes you through a process to get to a best case scenario. And in partnership with Aegis Trust, which is a nonprofit in London, who was significant in helping Rwanda return to where they are now after 30 years, and 30-year anniversary right now of the genocide there. We're training 1 million young peacemakers to commemorate the 1 million that were murdered in Rwanda 30 years ago. And after October 7th, the goal has been upped significantly because of the hate out there on anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racial bullying, you name it. We're going to be training 250 million young people in the next few years on Non-Flict, as well as others, but the young people for sure, and raising a bunch of money to build or partner to have peace centers like they have in Rwanda and different cities around the world to make an impact that way. So love to talk to you more about that as well. But thanks for the invite, Jacob. Good to meet everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Royce. Welcome, everybody. So we are a little over time. We will get started. Before we get started, quick logistics issue to make sure that interpretation is working in the French channel. Sarah, can you confirm? Or
yeah, I do see that interpretation is working, but I think, Paul, if you're able to, could you switch from the English channel to the French channel? I can hear you interpreting just in the English channel. So I think folks might be a bit confused. If you could switch to the French channel, then I think it will work.
And then, Sarah, can you mention in French the interpretation for the French speakers so that they can...
Yeah, bonjour tout le monde. Nous avons une interprétation en français grâce au Dr. Paul Marie Et vous trouverez en bas de votre écran le bouton d'interprétation.
Thank you, Sarah.
Très bon accent là-bas. Très bien.
Merci.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Very excited to have you join us for the third monthly call of the year. Today's call is special for a number of reasons, but mostly because in 2021, as some of you may know, MCLD began a journey of transformation. We used to sit inside, we were hosted by the Hunger Project. We had been incubated by the Hunger Project, and we began this journey of transforming and moving from being a movement to a movement organization, whatever that means. And we co-created what this journey would look like, what our organization would look like, and what where we want to be. One of our commitments as part of this whole co-creation process was to make sure that we were very transparent about it, that we shared, not just that we co-created every step of the process with all of our members, but we shared at every step of the process where we were, what challenges we were facing, and where are we going next, to make sure that we remain true to our principles, our values, our commitments, and the shared vision that we had created for ourselves. It's been a while since we did that. So today's call, we are going to talk about a little bit of where we are in this journey, right? So it's a storytelling call, a storytelling of where we are and where we intend to go to. Sarah, if we can go to the next slide, please. So we're going to speak to the strategic plan. We're not going to go into the history. We have some great resources for people who are new to learn about the history and how this journey has been. But we're going to speak to where we are at now, our strategic plan for 2024, the process of creating a new strategic plan for 25 to 28, the zillion activities that we are a part of that I know sometimes for members, it is like, how much do? We do a lot, thanks to all of you. So just a brief overview of the things that we do. And I'm very happy that we actually have the entire MCLD Secretariat team with us today, and that we have so many members from national associations. Also, I know there was a little bit of a challenge with this invite, so apologies if you got multiple invites, and I know many people did not get invites. So Google, somehow the calendar capped invites. Something happened, which I don't understand. Technology and me, we have an uneasy relationship, let's just say. But in the meantime, so that's one part of our call that we are going to be talking about really. Where are we at? Where are we heading to? Where do we need your support? What is your vision? Is this what we had initially thought of and that you were part of visioning? So that's the majority of this call. But the other very important thing that happened this month was the Commission on the Status of Women, which took place in New York earlier this month. And we have, if we go to the next slide, we're going to have two report outs on the CSW. We're going to hear from Anna Slattery from the Hunger Project, who's going to talk to us. Yes, thank you, Sarah. So we're going to hear from Anna Slattery from the Hunger Project about some of the key things she heard at the CSW, the key themes, where we are at. And then we are going to hear from John Kundrat, who is the co-founder of MCLD and also our US board chair. So we'll have a very quick round of that because that's going to help us also situate where we are in our journey in this broader systems transformation that we are all trying to, bring about, right? Because for MCLD, we set out to transform the system, but we realize we have to transform ourselves in the process, right? So the two are interrelated, and we hope Anna and John will, by at least telling us what's happening, what the key themes are, again, help us to contextualize where we are, some of our activities and goals and plans for this year as we go later into the discussion. Before I hand it to Anna, though, because there are some new people on this call today, I'm going to very quickly hand it over to my colleague, Steve, to give us a short 2-minute introduction to MCLD. Very easy task, Steve. 2-minute introduction to MCLD. Over to you.
Yeah, and I think you already did a bit of that intro. But of course, so MCLD is we identify as a majority world-led network of networks, and we launched in 2015 alongside the SDGs in New York. And since then, we have grown to over 2,000 local CSOs and in 17 associations. Majority of those are actually found in Africa, in countries like Kenya, Uganda, Malawi, Tanzania, Nigeria, and where you all come from, you know. And yes, I think we can move to the next slide, Sarah. And the reason why we launched is we exist to address these key goals, one of which is being a voice and agency for women, youth, and people living with disability and other marginalized groups, and to drive adequate community finance. At least we are saying that 20% of local or national government budgets should go to community-led projects, and now even fund CBO initiatives. We have achieved some success in that front in places like Kenya. The local governments that are already doing that through our capacity strengthening support. And then number three, of course, is to champion good local governance. And that in turn leads to quality public service and resilient communities. I think that's pretty much it, Gunjan. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. That was a 2-minute introduction. I can't do that, so I'm very impressed. Well, we're going to move to CSW now. We will come back to MCLD and talk more about what we do, where we are in the journey. I also realized I didn't introduce myself. So I am Gunjan Veda, and I am the Global Secretary for the Movement for Community-Led Development and also the Executive Director of MCLD US. With that, over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Gunjan, and thanks for having me on this call. It's really fun to see everybody that I haven't seen in a few weeks since the movement officially transitioned out of the Hunger Project. But as Gunjan mentioned, I had the opportunity to go down to CSW. It was held in New York City a couple of weeks ago, and it was my first Commission on the Status of Women in person for since the pandemic. And it was really heartening to see the number of people in New York. The conference has definitely bounced back. The rooms were absolutely packed for every single parallel event, side event. All of it was really full, and the conversations were flowing. So I have a couple of reflections on different things that I think are relevant to this community as far as UN engagement and the status of women in general. The first is that the idea of localization was definitely present during the conference. There were a fair number of civil society groups that were representing different regions, but obviously that number could be so many more. Having these conferences in New York and Geneva just makes it so cost prohibitive, even for American organizations. The cost of hotels right now in New York are astronomical. And so it puts nonprofits and charity organizations in a really tough spot. So I think the UN's going to have to do some work on kind of spreading out where their conferences are, making sure that visas are not an issue, making sure that the cost of participation is not too high. But like I mentioned, the idea of localization was definitely a theme. And I attended a funding launch where all of the prime grantees are going to be local organizations. But again, only maybe 1 or 2 people in the room were from the majority world. And so kind of having that launch among the people who would not, or would be the benefit, it would be much more effective to have that launch in a location where many more of the potential implementers could be present and part of the conversation. The other big piece of conversation that I saw was there's a lot of talk around the Summit of the Future and the UN reform and finding ways for civil society organizations to better participate in the United Nations processes. And I think we still have to wait a bit to understand how that summit's going to shake out and the different ways that we can be participating in it. But this does seem like a moment that the UN is eager to hear from civil society organizations about ways of participation. But from my own perspective, I still believe that the best way to truly engage with the UN is at that national or regional level. Once the conversation is getting to New York or Geneva, the deals have already been done, and it's really more about making statements. So if you believe that the UN is a vehicle or a platform for the issues that you care about, I would find ways to engage with the local missions, participate in the national processes that are happening at within the national governments. That way your ideas are getting incorporated well before they reach New York. And so I think that's kind of my biggest reflections from CSW. I know that's not super focused on women in general, but I think I think there's continuing agreement among everybody who participates in Commission on the Status of Women that women are important and are key to development. So those are kind of the themes that underlie that entire conference. I don't know, John, I'd love to hear what your takeaways were.
Great, thanks, Anna. And let me also mention Nellie was there with us, and I'm sure other people were there with us. There were 9,000 of us at CSW this year. And I was really struck by how young it turned out people were. I've been going to these meetings for 40 years now, and people ask me what has changed in 40 years. I said, well, there has been progress on some of these issues, but mostly is that how enormous number of young people are at these conferences. And given that our number one priority, that goal that Steve just referred to, is to ensure voice and agency for women, youth, people with disabilities in the decisions that affect their lives. So there were three main topics going on in this meeting. Number one was the engagement and financing of women's collectives. That was the stated priority goal. And there were, Sarah, if you could throw back up the slide, there was a huge session with a lot of women some of whom we have had on our calls, who are running feminist funding agencies and applying feminist principles to, Sarah, So the Equity Fund, we've been on calls with Frida. There are pioneering women who are running their own funding agencies and getting rid of things like competition. I mean, literally, you do not have to have competition in a funding process. And so that's something that we have all been battling up against, is how kind of evil it is to do funding on a competitive basis when you really want everyone working together. The second was a big focus on the unjust distribution of care work in our world, that it's women who do most of the unpaid care work in the home and in the community, and that is just unjust. We guys ought to be pulling our own weight in the unpaid care work or finding ways to have care work be paid. The third overarching theme that wasn't is reform of the international financial architecture. That is, currently, who makes the decisions in the current international financial architecture, the World Bank, the IMF, are not the majority world people. It's the people with the money and the power who are making those decisions. And a lot of those decisions revolve around what was referred to over and over as illegitimate debt. The majority world countries, many of them, take Haiti, for instance, they're still under debt because there was a revolt of enslaved people back in the 1700s. And they were forced to pay reparations, not to the enslaved people, but to France, the French, quote, owners of enslaved people. So there's a lot of illegitimate debt that countries are burdened with, and that has got to be gotten rid of. The other thing that I'm really interested in is the participation of local governments. And there were lots of local governments participating because our partnership with, as you heard from Steve say, our partnership between civil society and local government, democratic local government, is part of our vision for how to transform the world. So back to you, Gunjan.
Thank you so much, Anna and John. That was amazing, both to hear, some of the content reflections on what the themes were, and where the decisions were centering. Great to hear that we're having more youth coming in. But also, Anna, I think you raised some really important issues around who has access to these spaces, right? And the kind of rethinking that is required around that. Because if John, as you said, locally led development, recognizing local organizations, women-led local organizations, and funding them, all of those are themes. And about, voice and agency for them are themes. Then again, they are happening in places where a majority of them don't have access. And that's really part of and we'll talk about it a little later in the call also, but that's what prompted that letter, which I'm sure most of you have heard about, which was now it's over 1,700 majority world actors and organizations, which penned a letter to funders, foundations, bilateral governments, INGOs, conveners all over the world saying, this is not how you do locally led development. If you are serious about locally led development, these are the 5 principles that you need to adhere to in order to do convenings on locally led development. So we'll talk more about that later, but, Anna, exactly to what you raised, that was one of the key issues there on where these conferences are held, who has access to them, who is able to participate in them, and therefore, which voices shape the agenda, the policies, and the decisions that come out of it. If anyone has any other comments, questions, takeaways, if you were at CSW, we'll give it, please raise your hand or put it in the comments box. And then we will move to the second half of our call. But anyone else has any takeaways from CSW or from what they heard from Anna and John? All right. If not, then again, big thank you, Anna. I know it was very short notice. We literally only spoke to Anna yesterday to see if she would be able to come in and do a report out. So appreciate that. And John, thank you so much for, speaking to some of the key themes that are emerging. And I'm going to request everybody to keep those themes in mind, not just now as we go through the movement's journey, our strategic plan for 2024 and our process of strategic planning for 25 to 28. But actually, as we go through the process itself, starting as early as next month, the strategic planning process will start. And it would be important to ground ourselves and our thinking in some of the key themes which are emerging and what's happening in the sector overall. So thank you both. With that, we will launch into the second part of our call today. And that is really about MCLD, right? So we've heard a lot in recent times around storytelling. Storytelling has emerged as a very powerful tool, not just for systems transformation. It's being used in monitoring and evaluation. In fact, one of the things I know one of our colleagues, Pascal, is looking into bringing to our community is work which is happening around storytelling for trauma healing, for instance, or systems healing. So there are many ways and forms in which the importance of storytelling has been recognized. But storytelling is not new, right? It's been there forever. If we look at our communities, at our history and culture, storytelling is how tradition, information, knowledge has passed on from one generation to the next. What is unique when we speak to storytelling around systems transformation, though, in the context of shifting power, in the context of decolonizing, in the context of community-led and locally led development, is that in the humanitarian and development sector, stories were often being told by external actors. And they were being told through their own lenses focusing on things that they thought were important. And so the big transformation that we are trying to bring about in the system is the importance of people telling their own stories in their own voices, focusing on what they think is important in their own languages, in ways and forms that they would like to communicate in, right? So as we know, MCLD, so this is really about MCLD's story of transformation within, and how we are hoping this transformation within is also going to be part of the systemic transformation that we are hoping to create with all of our members, over 2,000, as Steve noted in that introductory slide. I'm not going to go into the history of that transformation, of how we started, of, how we, started this process of coming out of the Hunger Project, of how we became a movement and how we moved from becoming a movement to a movement organization. That's not my story to tell alone. All of us, many, many organizations from all over have been part of that journey. And it's our collective story. And we have some fabulous resources that tell the story in the voices of the people who have been part of this journey. So we will share those here for you to look at. Sarah, if we can share a link to the article in the International Journal for Partnership Studies on MCLD's transformation, and then John's piece about the journey of MCLD. So for those of you who are interested, that will tell the story of MCLD's transformation in the voices of people who've been part of that journey. But today, what the team and I are going to share with you is, where are we at in this journey? What are some of our key goals? What is our strategic plan for this year? What is our new structure looking like? How will the Global Assembly, which is such an important part of our new structure, when will it take place? What will it do? And what is going to be the strategic planning process from 25 to 2028? So we're going to share some of the ideas, thoughts, what we have come up with so far, and we would love, of course, your feedback and input, because we are about to begin the process. I'm also very happy to note that we have with us board members, not just from MCLD US, but from many of our national associations and steering committee members who are part of this call today. So thank you to all of you. Next slide, please. While it comes up. Okay, so this slide tells us a little bit about our structure. Let's go back to the next slide, Sarah, since we broke it up. One of the challenges of ensuring access is that the amount of stuff you can fit onto a slide gets very limited. Sarah, the second structure slide, where we have the national associations. Okay, we have technical issues. Slides are moving slightly slowly. Thank you. Great. So 2022, as some of you may be aware, and for those of you who are not aware, you can read it in the articles. We began a process of intentional listening to all our members to identify the new structure for ourselves. That how do we go about from being a movement to a movement organization, such that we retain all our values and ethics, and yet are sustainable, are able to get funding to be able to carry out the work that we are doing, right? And how do we ensure a structure where power is collaborative? It comes from our collective. It comes from our relationships and our interactions with each other, and not from any individual, organization, or person. So after a period of intensive, consultation, we arrived at the structure. We had always believed, since MCLD was created, that the heart and soul is the national associations, who used to be called chapters at one point. But now we formalize that foundational pillar of MCLD in this new structure. So we start with national associations. Currently, there are 17 national associations which exist or are under formation in MCLD. MCLD US is one of our newest national associations. It got registered last year, and it is for our INGO members. The rest are all majority world associations at this point. Every national association decides based on its reality what is the best structure for it. Does it want to be a registered entity with its own board in its country? Or does it want to exist within an entity? Or does it want to just be an informal group or a movement? The reality is different in every country, and the members decide that based on the reality of their country. So many associations have decided to register, many have decided to not register. The membership rules and norms are also decided by the members, every national association. Some have INGO country offices, some are only for local and community-based organizations as full members, some have academics, some have governments. They're all different. But what's common is that they are all based on democratic principles. They all have a democratically elected structure for operation, right? That's the foundation. If we go back to the previous slide then, Sarah. Then what we have is a secretariat. This secretariat does not sit in any one location. You met Steve earlier, who's our East Africa coordinator. He sits in Nairobi and is part of the secretariat. During the course of this call, you will meet our colleagues from Benin, from Uganda, from the US. We are getting somebody in Latin America and the Caribbean region. In fact, if you have any recommendations, people who are very committed to CLD in the region, send them our way. So our secretariat is spread out, and the goal and the purpose of the secretariat really is to support the national associations, to facilitate interactions and cross-learnings, but also global advocacy and transforming the system globally, right? And you'll hear how we've been doing that. Another role that the Secretariat has is to fulfill the policies and the mandate that have been set by the Global Assembly, and to create and operationalize this new structure that we decided on. So decision-making body, the body that decides our policies, our standards, our strategy, our way forward, our vision, is a Global Assembly, which is comprised of members from every national association. Hence, it's a majority world-led Global Assembly because 16 out of the 17 national associations are majority world, right? This Global Assembly, and we'll talk more about it as we go forward, is where all of these decision-making will happen. And this is the process that we are currently in of actually making this Global Assembly happen. So that's kind of our overall governance structure. That's a change from what we used to be, where we used to be a secretariat that was housed inside an INGO, which was very committed to this, right? From that, we've now moved to this global structure. But what has this change meant at the national association level? And what does a national association look like, especially a registered national association? I'm going to ask my colleague Joanna to share that. And I think there's one more slide before we get to that though, Sarah. Next slide. That's just to give you a sense of the countries we are in, national associations which are registered, where registration is taking place, where, you know, they're coming back together, and countries where we don't have associations, but we have very active membership and participation from. So if you are in any of these countries, want to join an existing association, be a part of creating one, please reach out to us. With that, Joanna, over to you. Tell us how it works in Uganda.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gunjan. I send my greetings to everybody here. Good to have you here. Yes, progress in Uganda is commendable, as a matter of fact, but that doesn't remove the reality that we do have challenges. And we appreciate these because they help us keep in check of our strategies and our actions. Uganda, we registered last year in May 2023, and we are now a legal entity with the Uganda government. We have an elective governance structure. As a national association, we have a structure of leadership at national level, and we do have at the community level, where we have regional coordinators supporting us. And these are all comprised of member CBOs. The national leadership is a composition of CBOs. The regional structure is a composition of CBOs who are members of MCLD. And in totality, we have 162 member CSOs who did come together last year. And we collectively developed our 5-year roadmap. That is the strategic plan. So we have a direction on where we would like to go. We also came together and then we created our policies together. This is all a contribution from the members. And we also created our membership charter. The membership charter is more like a constitution. It guides our membership, what it takes to be a member, what you should expect, what you should, what is your mandate, what are your benefits, and all that much. That is something that governs us and gives us guidance on what we should do and shouldn't do as a national association. We also have finalized on our audit report. This was the first of a kind that the National Association has ever had. These are few things that we have created, jointly talked about, discussed, and thought that these are pertinent items for us to stand out and be an association that can have the potential to collaborate, to network, and to make linkages with other associations and partners and any other interested persons. In February this year, on the 15th, we also came together and we had what we call our annual general meeting. In totality, we had 52 members coming together. These things we do, all of us together. We try to ensure that we bring members on board. It is just finances that constrain these things. But every time we come together, it brings in a sense of ownership. It brings in the commitment, the feel that people are part of it. It feels really good when members say our association, our ideas, our item. It feels really good. So we try our best to bring them together whenever we can. And on the 15th of February this year, we had our annual general meeting. And during this event, the most outstanding thing is that we elected a steering committee. This was the first elective steering committee that we have. And this is one of our guidelines from the membership charter, that we shall have an elective leadership. So we selected 5 members, 2 ladies and 3 gentlemen. We put gender balance and regional balance into consideration. When I say regional, it means north, east, west, south of the country, because we are different tribes all over. And yes, that was a key for us. We have also gained identity from what we see, and we have been recognized by different stakeholders. We get invitations for consultations in meetings, in events, in conferences, to have our members speak and share about community-led development, the importance, the relevancy, how it can be integrated in development work and humanitarian work. And so we feel that we are being recognized, and we feel that we are impacting policies gradually. It takes time, yes, but we really appreciate this. We have also been instrumental in contributing to improved nutrition. Uganda has already received a grant, and we appreciate this. This is the Right to Grow project, where we are in partnership with 6 partners, international and national organizations. We have World Vision, Action Against Hunger, Center for Economic Governance and Accountability, Food Rights Alliance, and we have contributed, I believe, immensely in the nutritional outcomes through this project. And our role here is to mobilize communities and ensure that there is an understanding on the good practices of food, nutrition, and wash. And we are doing this year, and we are doing the same during next year. These are some of the things or the key issues that we have been involved with, that we feel strengthen us as a national chapter. And we are really grateful that we are progressing, and our progress is being recognized. And we believe that if we continue in this manner, or much better, we can be a much bigger association for every other partner to come on board and support and work with, and we are open to that. Yes, if anybody has any questions, please, you can ask me and I'll answer it. That's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you, Joanna. So from what Joanna said, again, a couple of things why we wanted to share this story. We have many national associations, and each of them has their own remarkable, unique thing about them. The first national association that was created was actually in Nigeria, 2020, way before we at MCLD were even thinking of registering and becoming an entity. Nigeria and then Liberia had the foresight to do it. Uganda, as you heard, is very new. It only got registered last year, but as an association, it's been functioning for many years. And they had a democratic structure. And the challenge for us really has been on how do we ensure that we continue to maintain our principles of inclusion, our principles of, democratic decision-making, collective decision-making, collaborative spaces. How do we ensure that continues in this huge national and global structures when there aren't models for us to follow and emulate, right? Because we tried for 2 years when we were going through this process, we tried asking people, do you know of an organization that has these things in the structure? And they were like, no, we can tell you what not to do. We can't tell you what to do. So within a year, Uganda has been able to do so much. And a huge part of it is because of its membership, who are all volunteers, right? In fact, most of our national associations, the membership, the leadership, even the coordinators are all volunteers. And they have managed to do so much that this year, DevEx recognized 24 organizations to look out for in 2024. There were organizations like the World Food Program, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, like the UK Office for Foreign Aid and Civicus. And then there was the movement for community-led development. Without any funding, without anything but just the passion, the dedication of its membership. That's the change and influence we've had. We're going to pause here for discussion and questions, actually, and then we will go to our strategic plan, goals, and global assembly. And I see there is a hand up already. Aroma? Please unmute. Aroma Patrick?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I am Patrick Aroma. I am based in Lira City, Northern Uganda. First of all, I would like to appreciate the presentation made by Jonah. And I would like to really state very clearly that my organization would really like to join hands with the MCLD in Uganda. And after this meeting, Jonah, I promise I'm going to make a follow-up because you are already implementing the nutrition project. My organization works with a network of farmers. We were previously supported by FAO and other international organizations. And we have a network of farmer-faced schools that can really be of great help in implementing nutrition projects. So I'll make a follow-up after this meeting. Thank you. Thanks a lot. God bless.
Thank you, Rama. Great. And, one of the things about MCLD is that because we are a network, we have organizations who bring in different kinds of expertise, sectoral expertise, relationships with the communities, great ideas on how to work with communities, on the principles of operationalizing CLD. And that's really the strength of this collective, this ability to learn together, to implement together, and to move from a competition mindset to one of collaboration, and even more than that, one of solidarity. Because collaboration, you do that, when you do that, you collaborate for a project, for a pot of funding. For some, there is an incentive that drives collaboration. Solidarity is values-based. It is because we believe in the same things. We are passionate about that same change and the same values. And solidarity is an underlying goal for us at MCLD. Are there any other questions about our national associations, about our global governance structure? Anything which is new for you, which is not clear? Or is this what you had in mind if you were part of this visioning process? Anything before we move on to our strategic plan? No? Okay. If there aren't any, then we are going to now move to the next part. And I really hope this is a part we will get questions. More importantly, we will get feedback from all of you on, because this is where we do need feedback. And this is on our strategic plan for 2024, our key goals and activities for this year, and our process for the rest of the year and strategic planning. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Pascal. And before Pascal comes and shares the plan, just one thing about how we created this. Because we don't yet have a global assembly, this strategic plan was created through the work of national coordinators across these different MCLD associations in our national coordinator meetings. So Pascal, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Gunjan. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Pascal Jokoso from the Permanent Secretariat for the CLD in Benin and from the West Africa Coordination for the MCLD. I will be presenting the highlights of 2024 strategy plan of MCLD. Starting with our vision, which is for every communities in the world to have the resources, skills, knowledge, autonomy, and equitable partnership to achieve own goals and visions. And the goals has been set up, and we have 7 goals. The first one is to implement the new governance structure. Please, you will remember that we keep in mind that the new governance structures include, as mentioned earlier, the Global Assembly, the Secretariat, the National Board, and the National Membership. Number 2 is the National Association in all regions. Here we refer to how we do build this and sustain strong chapter and equip them with needed resources that enable them to move towards and achieve their goals and vision. Number 3 is the National Association sets strategic plan. And here we know that the strategic plan serves as a roadmap to guide during the journey to vision. Number 4 is inclusive leadership for women, youth, people with disabilities, and marginalized groups. Number 5 is to strengthen the practice of CLD, particularly through network weaving, trainees, monitoring and evaluation, and so on. Number 6 of this goal is influence policies for systemic transformation. And this is key points of the strategic plan. How do we make sure that we influence systemic transformation? Number 7, increase solidarity with majority world networks and minority world alliances. And that's why solidarity here is very important, to make sure that the majority world network and minority world alliances work in partnership and show that solidarity could be the major value for transformation in our communities and in our world. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pascal, for sharing our strategic plan for 2024. Like I mentioned, this is the Global MCLD strategic plan. It will be up on our website, the detailed strategic plan soon. Now, in addition to this, many national associations have their own strategic plans. Uganda, I know, has one. Nigeria has one. It was mentioned. Others are in the process of drafting it. MCLD US last month, the board adopted the strategic plan for MCLD US. So all of those strategic plans and documents for countries are on our website, and you can check them out if you are interested in finding out about a specific country. But from the strategic plan and goals, so how does this translate into the zillion things that you keep hearing about sporadically through emails, right? What are our key activities? I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, Marielle, and Nellie to take us through that.
Thanks so much, Gunjan. And hopefully you guys can all hear me. I am having a few tech issues this morning, but let me know if I'm delayed or anything. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Sarah Bulbul. I'm with MCLD, the Secretariat team, and MCLD US, and I work mainly on our communications, our research, and our learning. You all already heard about the governance, so I think we'll skip that part of our slide, and I'll focus on policy and then pass it over to Marielle to present on solidarity. And like Gunjan said, you've all been key voices in many of these initiatives, so a lot of this will sound pretty familiar. So as policy, as part of our ongoing efforts to create spaces for funders to directly engage with local organizations, we've been partnering with Peace Direct under a grant from the Conrad and Hilton Foundation to continue to ensure that the knowledge and lived experience of local organizations shapes USAID's locally led development policy and metrics. So stay tuned for in-person and virtual consultations coming up this year. We are also collaborating with Peace Direct to develop a framework for a funder report card to assess the extent to which funders are genuinely supportive of the organizations that they fund or otherwise support in the majority world. And we hope that some of you will join us next week on April 3rd to share your input on what good practices look like in funding partnerships. Over to you, Marielle, for the solidarity piece.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. My name is Marielle. Like Sarah, I'm part of the Global Secretariat and a member of the MCLD US, and I focus on working with the MCLD to mobilize resources and strengthen our partnerships. And essentially, a key highlight for us of activities to increase solidarity with majority world networks and minority world allies, as underscored by Pascal, being that this is a key principle of ours. In November of 2023, we worked with Civicus and Peace Direct to facilitate a letter from majority world actors. And this letter was to funders, bilateral agencies, and international organizations on how to organize events on locally led development. And so hopefully we can take some of the lessons learned from John and Megan and pull that into the events that we do coming up later this year. And in terms of the letter, this emerged from a growing frustration, right? I'm a new member of MCLD, but this growing frustration has existed way before me joining in January and long before MCLD's current structure, right? And so the letter grew from a frustration informed from local organizations and networks that the lack of inclusion at key global events and forums was very apparent. So we've seen a great response to the letter. In less than 2 months, the letter received over 1,600 signatures from majority world actors. And since then, some of the biggest foundations and INGOs have signed on to express commitment to the 5 principles outlined in the letter. Your organization can still sign on through the link in the chat box. This letter is unique because it is completely majority world-led initiative where actors, again, are sharing how spaces on locally led development should be convened. And an announcement around the letter is also coming on April 3rd, so stay tuned. Over to you, Nelly.
Thanks, Mariel. And you can go to the next slide, Sarah. It's nice to be here with all of you. I'm also a new member of the MCLD team, and I'm supporting different collaborative opportunities across all of our members for MCLD US and through the Global Secretariat for learning and for building our network. So there is a tremendous amount happening across the movement, as Gunjan said earlier. I'll run through this really quickly now so we save time for questions and discussions at the end, but you can reach out to me if you want to talk about any of this further, and maybe Gunjan or Sarah can put my email in the chat box. So first, MCLD has continued to lead trainings all over the world, including a couple coming up this month in Mexico and in Ethiopia. We are also in the second year on the LIFE project, which is with World Vision and the Hunger Project, as well as a smaller research team, which is looking to understand community-led development through a community-led monitoring, evaluation, and learning approach, and it's specifically working in Bangladesh and Ethiopia. We are also initiating our work on the Powered by the People program, which is a really large consortium project funded by USAID with Partners Global and many other partners working with activists to look at nonviolent social movements. And we'll be organizing some regional consultations later this year to collect and help document stories of these movements, by movements, for movements from all over the world. In Kenya, the School for CLD is continuing and growing. The first class with 35 officials from McKinney County, Makwene County, graduated in November 2023. And the idea is to bring other counties in as we move forward. We also have brought back the Unlearning Labs and the monthly leadership development calls. They started this past month again. In the Unlearning Labs, we're continuing our community-led monitoring, evaluation, and learning series. The Unlearning Labs, if you don't know, they are a capacity strengthening workshop series that's focused on technical topics that we do, but they highlight the knowledge and experience within and across the movement rather than relying on an outside in and top-down training approach that is often used. The leadership calls, on the other hand, are a space to brainstorm, collaborate, tell stories of how we are doing the work that we and you all do all the time. Right now, we're beginning to share lessons similar to the one that Joanna just gave at a really briefly on the many steps that the different national associations are taking to set themselves up. And then finally, we are also initiating the working groups. There are 5 that will be in place now, including the Youth Task Force, which is already up and running. And we're collecting names of people that are interested and launching those groups now. So if you'd like to get involved in the working groups or more information on any of the other things, you can reach out to me. And I hope to be in touch with many of you in the coming months.
Thank you, Sarah, Mariel, Nelly, for that very, comprehensive overview of what we do. Many of you are a part of these activities, but we've also heard from many that it's just so much that's being done. So the idea was, normally in our monthly calls, we focus on, a topic, or we kind of get people and we speak to and discuss this. This time we wanted to reflect a little bit. And also take stock of where we are, both in terms of transparency and our commitment to transparency and accountability, but also to really ensure that everybody has a sense of where we are going on this journey, because it is a collective journey, right? And so we will, after this, we have one short segment left, and then we're going to pause again. So if you have questions on any of the activities, you want to join them, suggestions, anything that anybody mentioned, we're going to actually open it up in 5 minutes. But before we get to that, we have one last segment remaining. And that's in some ways the most important part of this conversation and call of what is the process for us going forward to operationalize our structure and to transform ourselves, right? And this is super important for us because it is not just about us as a movement living up to our values, but it is also offering a model in a sense so that other organizations who want to do this are not in a similar situation as us, like, yeah, but who can we learn from? Who has experimented? Are there good practices? Are there lessons? Are there failures, right, that we can learn from? So we are very intentionally documenting our journey, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else in the sector. And in fact, we've just been invited. Joanna and I will be in Tanzania next month, in Dar es Salaam, to share this journey, the learnings, and the challenges that we encounter and are encountering every day as part of this. So here's our next steps for this year. You all heard about our Global Assembly, which is our key decision-making body. That Global Assembly, we hope to hold the first meeting of the Global Assembly in July of this year. It'll have representatives from every national association. And in this Global Assembly, we are going to look at the mandate of the Assembly, committees for doing the work, and policies. That's going to be the focus of this Global Assembly. As part of this Global Assembly, so what we are doing currently is we are meeting with different national associations to ensure that they understand the process and they are able to decide who they want to send to the Global Assembly. One of the key things that the Global Assembly will be doing is creating the strategic plan and the vision for MCLD overall from 2025 to 2028. So this year, we intentionally only had a one-year strategic plan. And the reason for that was that it had to be a process which wasn't really consultative, right? Yes, we work with the national coordinators, but there was little time. We needed a strategic plan, so we did it with a closed group. But that is not the vision of MCLD. And that is not how collaboration works within a big group, right? So beginning this April, we are intentionally starting a process of strategic planning, which can engage each one of our members to the extent that they are able to engage. Because we also recognize that all of you are doing very important work in your communities. Many of you are working in very difficult circumstances. We just heard from the team from Nigeria the other day. You know, they work in an area with Boko Haram violence. They work in an area where they're dealing with kidnappings within their own families, within their own teams on an everyday basis, right? So we work with very difficult circumstances. Many of our team members, you heard from Jude from Liberia, connectivity is such a challenge that they struggle to even get onto our collective calls. So we're going to start a process which is going to roll out over 6 months, where we are going to reach out to our memberships through the national associations and global spaces to begin this process of strategic planning. We will put in place a strategic planning committee. It'll have 2 members from the Global Secretariat and 2 members coming from the different national associations. Feel free to volunteer for it if you would like to, but it does entail time commitment. The Strategic Planning Committee will then be responsible for this process. From April through June, we will have in-country consultations. So we are going to request the national associations to at least have consultations with their members on the vision, the strategic plan from 25 to 28 for MCLD overall. We will undertake visioning exercises with the coordinators and with members. We'll have some joint forums through this period. Once the Global Assembly is in place in July, we will undertake a visioning exercise and process with the Global Assembly. And then all of this we will collate into a strategic plan, which will be presented to the Global Assembly and approved by the Global Assembly. We hope to have it done by December of this year. So that's our timeline going forward for this year and our collective planning. What we would love to do now is to just pause and take questions, but more importantly, comments, feedback, ideas. How do we do the strategic planning process in a manner that is inclusive of members? Because one big challenge I want to throw to all of you, which we haven't been able to find a solution to, is connectivity. Many of our members, our CBO members, are in regions which do not have connectivity. There are cost issues of joining calls and being on calls. How do we get around this? How do we ensure that our members are able to participate without it being a financial strain on their resources? So that's the question for everybody. If you have ideas and suggestions, in addition to any other comments. Okay, we'll pause. Please raise your hands, unmute, type in chat. Reactions, thoughts, comments, suggestions. Yes, Mambu. First Mambu and then Aya. Mambu, do you want to unmute, please? Mambu,
Very much.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello.
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
hello. We are getting you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Johan and others, for the great presentation you guys have done very well. So I just have a concern towards the hunger project. So being that the hunger project is going on in other countries, I don't know how best MCLD Sierra Leone can get the opportunity to get the hunger project. Two, I also want to learn the hunger project area. So I stop here for now.
Thank you, Mambu. And just to clarify, so the Hunger Project is a nonprofit organization. It is one of the members of MCLD. And I actually don't know if we have any other representative from the Hunger Project on this call right now. Anna had to leave. So MCLD was incubated by the Hunger Project.
I do have a continuing role with the Hunger Project. And Mambu, I sent in the chat a response to you. And you can also visit thp.org. But MCLD is independent of THP now. And THP has very limited resources of its own. So it is not likely to go into more countries, but their methodology is freely available. And I put a link in the chat to where the toolkit for their strategy is available.
Thanks, John. Aya?
Thank you very much, Kunjan, for the detail and others for the detailed presentation. Actually, as you were saying, you said there will be a committee set for the reproduction of the strategic plan. And for me, for now, I'm seeing that because there was no strategic plan, so what have you done? You decided to produce something that should be in place. And it has some other details that are supposed to be in the plan, like costing, like capturing the national associations, what you would like to submit, or let's say remittances that the national association will be benefiting from the global assemblies, that kind of thing supposed to be in the strategic plan, so that there could be a direct indication of how the movements will be going or how it might go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aya. Great inputs. And yes, that is exactly what it was. 2024, it could not be as consultative or detailed because we needed to have a plan in place, but we intend to do that with this 4-year plan. And you're so right in pointing out that remittances is an important area for us to actually consider as we are drafting that plan. So thank you for that. That's a great suggestion. Okay, any other ideas, thoughts, comments, questions?
Yes, yeah, I just have an suggestion. I don't know how best you guys can handle it, being that we only have the French and the English, which you guys translate. So I don't know how best you can also join, or you can add the Portuguese, because in Africa we have this Portuguese speaking country. So I don't know if they are part and parcel of this MCLD platform, because MCLD is a global issue. So please, I'm suggesting how best MCLD can add the Portuguese and the Arabic also, because some countries they are speaking Arabic, but some of them are speaking Portuguese. So I don't know. It's just a suggestion. I thank you.
Thank you. Those are very important points. We normally try to do French and Spanish on our calls, depending on our membership. We have done Arabic and Swahili a few times, but you're right, we actually haven't done Portuguese, partly because there hasn't been a request for it, but we also realize that access is about ensuring it is there. If you don't have a language, people can't come. So it's no excuse to say that, oh, because nobody's asking, we don't. We do have some limitations in terms of the number of languages we are able to go to, but I think that's very critical what you have raised. Thank you so much. And we will bring that to our global assembly to also see how do we prioritize and ensure language access.
Excuse me, Gunja.
Yeah.
This is Kabade from Ethiopia.
Yeah. Kebede, and then after that, I know Barry had her hand up. So Kebede, we'll listen from you and then go to Barry. Yes.
All right. So I just have one question. That question is that I was listening to about associations, national associations. Does it mean that in the local, in the MCLD, only national associations are allowed to be a member of this MCLD? That's my question.
Great question, Kebede. So the way our structure is that we have members, we have national associations who have members, individual organizations, sometimes even people. Every association has a different rule. They are part of the decision-making structure of MCLD. So the Global Assembly comes only from national associations. However, we recognize that there are many countries in the world where we don't have associations, where we have very active participation from, and we have not been able to support associations because of logistical and other constraints. So anybody is free to join our monthly calls, our mutual capacity strengthening forums, the calls that we do, the learning calls, the leadership calls, those are open to everybody. You do not have to be a national association member to participate in these forums. However, our decision-making structure is through national associations. Ethiopia, you said you're in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, we do have a national association, and we can connect you if you're interested with the coordinator for the Ethiopia National Association. We also have Steve on our call here, who is our East Africa coordinator. So Steve can also connect you with them. And Liana, great point. We actually started doing sign language interpretation, ASL interpretation on some of our calls. Last year, it was a commitment. We did partner with a group in Sierra Leone around that. But yes, we haven't had that in the last few calls. And you're absolutely right. It was a commitment we made, and we should continue to have that. Barry, and then Lossie. Barry first.
First of all, I apologize. I can't turn on my video right now, and I couldn't. I'm not even sure why, but I can't even get my photo up. So you can just look at my B. I was actually going to comment on the vision, and I was actually waiting for other questions first about the strategic plan. So I don't know if you want to take all those first and come back to me, that's okay. Or if you want, I can just go ahead. Whichever.
Well, why don't you go ahead, Barry, because we will have,
Okay.
like I said, a detailed exercise around all of
Okay.
this. This is just comments and feedback. So
All right. Sarah, I don't know how quickly you could get back to it, but the slide that had the vision on it. And what struck me, and I just, this is for a longer conversation, I'm sure, but as I was reading through that, it sort of surprised me a little bit that I don't see anything in the overall vision that is very specific to community-led, the leadership part of it. So I'm not quite sure what language would be best there, but it strikes me that resources, skills, knowledge, autonomy, and equitable partnerships does not explicitly identify the collective leadership, the inclusive leadership within the community itself. I don't know if governance may not be the right word for all communities, but something along those lines seems to be important to have explicitly stated there, since our whole focus is community led. So that's just something to think about at some point. I'll leave it at that.
thanks, Barry. Great point. I mean, for us, it was part of the own goals and visions. So that's leadership because they are deciding everything. But great point noted for the visioning exercise. Lassie. Lassie, do you want to unmute? And Sarah, we can take off the slide. Thank you. Lassie, are you able to unmute? Okay, while we wait for Lassie to unmute, anyone else wants to also come in, please?
Yes, I want to come in.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, we can
From
hear
my
you.
side, it's about 3 in the afternoon. Are you getting me?
Yes, we are. We can hear you.
Yeah, I am Musu Juliet, Aware Women from Sierra Leone. And thank you very much for this laudable initiative, bringing us all on board as one body. We have a lot of potentials in our country, but we don't have the logistics. We don't have the instruments to get into some of the activities you may be talking about. But we want to thank MCDA Sierra Leone, Lossie, and others who will help us to get the standard. Like me speaking here, today is my second time attending meetings. And it may be take some time. It may not be difficult, but slow a bit for us to come on board, really to understand. So maybe, I don't know if it has happened, I need to be corrected, but if it did happen, I want to apologize. Maybe I've not been following up. There are a lot of grassroots community-based organizations with MCLD Sierra Leone, and we need to build their capacity. A lot of capacity building is required, wherein especially the women and people with disability, we come on board to understand the movement. Maybe like our discussion for Global Assembly, Lossie and other community members, if you can share maybe what is to be discussed in the meeting before the meeting, we can get a meeting with them and we can understand better what is coming on. Unfortunately, it was about 3 o'clock that I was able to get in the network. Not that we don't have members who have great and brilliant ideas, but for now, you need to give us some time. We are coming on board. And when we come on board fully, you will know you have people. Thank you all. And Lucy again and MCDS Realing chapter, I want to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. Again, we are noting all the points that everybody is raising, from access around language and sign language to the statements around the vision to connectivity. Very important issue. But again, Juliet, the other point that you raised is that it's not just about connectivity. It is also about, advance notice, about sharing beforehand what is happening, and then working with the associations and members about capacity strengthening areas. So again, thank you so much. Very well noted. And we appreciate your coming on board despite the short notice. Arthur? Arthur, do you want to unmute? Arthur Kargbo? I'm sorry if I hope I'm saying your name correctly.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Hello,
can
good
hear you.
afternoon.
Afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And good to get you. I was struggling actually to get the network. Slowly now I've been able to get it down. And I think I just want to join the queue with other colleagues from MCLD Sierra Leone, and that we are passionate about the results we are to enhance. And it's a process. We're still looking forward to the transformation process, and we want to make sure we meet those plans. However, moving forward in our monthly engagement, we have decided to establish various committees, like what my colleague was saying, in order for us to catch up with the deliverables that we are to meet. And that eventually we are getting a lot of lessons within these various task force we've established in our platform, in order to make sure that those 7 priority areas are being targeted. Precisely, the strategic plan is a tool that we really want to use to make sure that we capture those 7 priorities that we have already, to make sure that the members are tied up to the thematic interventions, such that we would be able to engage international partners in country, and using those results or those outcomes to inform the global chapter. And you still need to give us the needful support, morally or technically, for us to make sure that our strategic plan is a priority for us now, like I said, and we want to use that particular tool to talk to development actors in an effort to cascade the community-led approach, to the rural communities, making sure that they own those processes. And we in turn would be able to serve as a conduit to reach out those other, needful or vulnerable environment. So that's what it takes. We are passionate about the plan, and we'll see exactly how or where would that take us to. For the women transformation outcome, it has also been part of the task force that we established to make sure that all of the objectives that are related to promoting women's rights issues are being kind of put together, and then try to see how we could enhance those, individual organization objectives that are generally related to to the priority of the MCLD Sierra Leone chapter, and also at the same time aligning it with the global objective. So without much ado, I just want to register our commitments through the leadership of One Village Partner and the team, that we would always make sure that this is part of our niche, is part of our DNA. Community-led movement is part of our DNA, and we're definitely looking forward to your technical support, ensure that we enhance more active members to participate in this, occasional call that we normally try to make use of. I thank you so much, and
Thank
we're
you.
looking forward to new strategies.
Thank you so much, Arthur. That was super helpful. And again, we are noting all of these inputs. Quickly, couple of things. We did note Ogeni Morris from Uganda had some excellent suggestions on the strategic planning process. Thank you, Ogeni. We've noted those. I also want to note that I've realized that perhaps it's a little intimidating for our Francophone colleagues to come in, because our conversation is happening in English, but you should feel free to speak in French if you are a Francophone colleague and want to share. So please do not feel that you can only speak in English. We have translation. You can speak in French, you can type in French, and we would love to hear from you. And then, Jacob, to your question, we are planning an annual review and reflection on the strategic plan as part of our process. Okay. Sarah, do you want to get up the last slide? We have a couple of minutes left to just talk about upcoming events. And meantime, once again, if any Francophone colleague wants to share, please raise your hand or type in chat. We will take in the Francophone responses. Sarah, why don't you start? And if anybody raises their hand, we'll come back to them.
Sure, that sounds good. A lot of this is probably going to be review, since we've mentioned most of these events earlier in the call. But as you can see, we have a busy April coming up, starting with April 3rd. Marielle mentioned this earlier. Keep your eyes out for an announcement from us, from Peace Direct and Civicus, related to the Majority World sign-on letter. Also on April 3rd, the event that we mentioned earlier, MCLD is collaborating with Peace Direct and the advocacy team and UNOY to develop a framework for a funder report card. And this meeting on April 3rd is an opportunity for local voices to give your input on that self-assessment, that accountability tool for funders. And it will also be in English and French. Thank you to Dr. Paul Marie for his brilliant translating. Tentatively, on April 17th, we will have the monthly MCLD Leadership Development Call. This is a fantastic series that many of you frequently participate in, and we brought those back last month and look forward to continuing in April. On April 24th, we have our Global Monthly Call, usual time, 10 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. UTC. And on April 30th, this is a meeting on a repository for nonviolent action, part of the Powered by the People project that Nelly introduced. This is our new project on stories of movements, by movements, for movements, and this will be the first in a series of meetings about the repository for nonviolent action. And this one on April 30th will be only for activists, and we'll be sending more information soon. And we're already preparing for the UN High-Level Political Forum, which is a great annual opportunity to review the SDGs. And we'd love to know if you or people in your network will be there. So drop Nelly an email if you plan to participate.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I see that, nobody else put up their hand, none of our Francophone colleagues, and we are at time. So we will do the usual MCLD, unmuting and saying bye together. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. As you can see, we've come a long way. We do a lot of things, and it's possible because of all of you, whether you are part of a national association, whether you are a member attending our global calls and giving us suggestions and holding us to account. And we really, really appreciate each one of you, the time and effort you put into making this movement what it is today. We are being recognized in every forum, and it is only because of all of you. The work you do in your communities on an everyday basis, the passion you bring into forums like this, and the knowledge and lived experience that all of you share with each other and with all of us, that is what helps us to carry on the work of transformation that we are all doing together. So thank you so much for your partnership and for everything that you all do. We may not have spaces or resources to recognize it the way we would like to, but we just want to acknowledge how much it means to all of us. Thank you. And bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 I'll see you again.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Lucy, are you getting me?
That's not Lassie, that's actually Juliet. Whoever was
Yes.
looking for Lassie.
I'm seeing you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.